Good morning. Thank you very much, dear Kani, for hosting us here. This is a very important day because it's the day during our presidency in which we will discuss in depth and address the issues of competition policy. We're living in testing economic times, not just recently. We turn back with hindsight. It's really since the turn of the century that we are living in testing times, a time of profound change in our economies, of really structural transformation driven by the need to decarbonize and to hold climate change, and also driven by digital technologies, but also a time of unprecedented shocks. We've had shocks coming from public health. We have war. We have the consequences of all that in the form of a return of inflation, which is very important about the functioning of markets and the efficient functioning of markets. And we also have a world in which increasingly power is used to obtain economic gain. You know, the idea that we had about globalization a few decades ago is now quite old, and we are living in a world of what I would, dare to call dirty globalization. Faced with these very challenging environment, I'm glad to say that the European Union has reacted, I think, in full force by learning and by adapting and changing, which is, I think, the imperatives of the day. We have almost forgot on this side of the channel about Brexit, but that was part of these reactions of the European Union. There has been, of course, COVID, and how the European Union reacted with an unprecedented program of investments and structural reforms in the form of the Next Generation EU, that in Spain is the Recovery and Resilience Plans, that is elsewhere. And this reaction has allowed the European economy to go back in full force to recover and to have now a situation in which we are at stable situation with strong labor markets and facing new threats with a more resilient economy. The EU has reacted also to war, Russian war of aggression in Ukraine with unity, with determination. And so I think the good news is this process of adaptation is ongoing. Competition policy is a cornerstone of the internal market. And of course, competition policy is the quintessential of a common European policy. So that is why in this transformation process, the role of competition policy and the need to adapt competition policy to the challenges of the day is essential. And that is what I'm going to talk about in my remarks today. We need to adapt competition policy to those aspirations of leading this transformation of the economy, of developing this new generation industrial policy, of enhancing this idea of a strategic open autonomy. So how to think about this process? I think it is important to have an analytical framework that helps us think about how to adapt competition policy and markets to this situation. I think it's useful in this respect to think of the economy as a complex evolving system, more an ecosystem than a mechanic structure, which is inherently dynamic, always changing by the interactions of differentiation, innovation, new strategies, new ideas, the replication of these novelties and this constant change. I think this is a useful way of thinking about the economy and how the functioning of markets needs to adapt and lead this structural process. It is a market in which, as we all know, of course, there are very heterogeneous companies, big, small, innovative, old, productive, non-productive companies, but there are companies that in many respects, or in most of the cases, they set prices. Of course, they set prices with full restriction, with a lot of restrictions, but they set prices. And still, in this landscape, competition policy is a driving force for change. It is what I think determines how that process is going to play out. And I think more importantly for us policymakers, it is what the outcome will be in terms of welfare for companies and for consumers. So lower prices, high quality services and goods. And so that is why it is so important for competition policy to adapt. I want to praise, the European Commission, also the two co-legislators and the national competition authorities for the work that has been carried out. Because, of course, we are not at the beginning of this process. We are well advanced in this process. A lot of things have been done. Kani has mentioned some of those, and the Vice President some others. Let me just kind of emphasize some of the progress that I think we've made. And it's very important that we are aware of the progress made in order to address and tackle the challenges that still lie ahead. First, on state aid. Of course, the COVID was an unexpected, unprecedented shock to the economy, in which all the economic policy had to react very quickly to prop up our economies, our companies. So the temporary crisis frameworks, of course, have been crucial in ensuring that viable companies, continue to withstand all the shocks brought about by COVID. I think that has been a successful process, not an easy one, but I think it's been successful because it has allowed member states to deploy the guarantees, the direct support to companies. And we see it in Spain, but I'm sure we see it elsewhere in Europe, and we see it by the data on the economy, that we have avoided scarring, we had avoided having persistent and permanent damage in our economies, and that is, I think, a major achievement. Of course, there is a need to kind of to adapt, to evolve. Now, COVID it looks past us, and we have new challenges. And of course, for that, it is important also to adapt the aid frame, the public aid framework. There have been kind of new adaptations. So the temporary crisis framework has turned into the temporary crisis and transition framework, and we are more focused on adapting the rules for helping companies address the investment needs of this digital and green transformation. I think it is crucial that we bear in mind that this effort is really to help companies invest and transform, not just to, help them recover costs in a situation of high energy prices, because we're all going to live in a context and we will have difficulties, and it's important that companies also address them by themselves. I praise the Commission for some of the additional changes in the general block exemption regulation, for example, that are helping us already with, for example, with our programs, industrial policy programs financed by the Next Generation EU funds, what we call in Spain jargon the PERTES. We're being able to deploy that more efficiently using the adaptations to this framework. Of course, in the digital realm, I think there's been a very speedy, and smooth approval of these new landmark regulations, which can create the framework to address the challenges posed by new digital platforms and these new forms of market power that, of course, you better than I know that our challenge, that we need new tools, and we need now to implement, as it has already begun, the implementation of the Digital Markets Act. It's also near completion the market definition notice, which I think it is also important. And there have been other progresses in adapting our tools also to ensure that not just between European companies in the internal market, but with companies that come from abroad and that benefit from subsidies from the foreign governments, there is a level playing field. You know, the foreign subsidies regulation is a case in point here. It's one that needs to be also implemented. And there have been further advancements in the field of antitrust and cartel, in the field of mergers regulation with the simplification package entering into force. I really think we have come a long way, and we need to be, I think, happy and aware of that progress. But of course, more is needed. We in Spain, because for us it was so paramount to use and to seize the opportunity of the next generation EU funds to transform our economy, to increase investment and to carry out structural reforms. We have been feeling that tension in how to adapt competition policies. We have been participating very actively in the debate on adapting competition policy. As you know, we've shared the different non-papers on state aid and its relation with investment programs, but also more generally on the need to adapt competition policy. And I think it is important that we reflect on what we need to achieve to complete this whole process of adaptation of competition policy. And starting with state aid. Here, a few months ago, there was a sense of urgency in the European Union because of the Inflation Reduction Act in the US and the threat that it posed to some of the industrial projects in the EU. I think, again, the reaction has been swift, has been speedy, and there have been changes in competition policy. There have been also changes that are ongoing in regulations for the new industrial policy with Net Zero Industry Act regulation and also with the critical raw materials. As I said, I think that there have been adaptations that are useful. In our view, this is not so much an issue of quantity, but of quality. I think we will not we will not win this battle by just trying to match the level of subsidies of other jurisdictions. We need to use our own strengths and be confident in the ability of the internal market to deliver that progress and that change and transformation. So yes, we need to be more flexible in using state aid, but I think what we really need is more transparency, more predictability for companies, and that is something that I think we're making progress, but we need more progress in order for companies to be able to plan ahead, to take their investment decisions at a time where what we need to do is to help that change and create the opportunities for companies to carry out those investments successfully, but very importantly, maintaining the level playing field in the internal market, both in terms of the use of the state aid opportunities and also in terms of the fiscal space of different countries. We need to bear that in mind. That is why it is important that we use, of course, national instruments to fund some of these industrial policy projects and to finance these European public goods, but it is very important, as we are doing with the Next Generation EU funds, that some of the European public goods the digital transformation, the green transition, also in other areas such as defense, that we're able to have instruments that are European and that can fund those public goods. Another issue which we think there is still work to do is the need to make consistent competition policy with our investment ambitions. The EU institutions, the EU Council has, adopted very ambitious objectives and goals for, the digital decade, for 2030. We are being, I think, very ambitious, and rightly so, because this is no time for slowing or for lowering the ambitions. But in order to do that, we need really to kind of promote investment and facilitate private investment. And from this point of view, I think there's a lot of work that has been done to really integrate that dynamic dimension in not just in state aid, but in the rest of the fields in competition policy, including the merger control. And I think this perspective, this dynamic perspective going forward, needs to be strengthened in order to, take decisions that, of course, preserve and promote and strengthen competition, at the same time create the framework for companies to invest, because we cannot kind of remain in a static framework when the economy and the world is changing so much, and when our political ambitions in terms of investment have been set so high. So again, it is an issue of balance. I think you are very active, and I don't need to kind of remind you that the importance of publicly defending the role of competition. But we need to agree and recognize that these are testing times also for making this case, because in this context, the degree of the public intervention in the economy is very high. Has been high during the pandemic, and now, of course, we're moving towards a different situation. But the role of the government will continue to be very active, and in this context, we need to ensure that this is compatible and can be compatible. I'm totally convinced, with a very strong competition policy. So let me finish by saying that really the stakes here are very high. I think we are all kind of appalled these days at the new bouts of war, of terror, situations in which remind us that we will not be safe until security and peace advances in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and elsewhere. In these times, we need to maintain, the economic stability and prosperity. In order to do that, we need an active role, an active policy, and economic policies are essential. We see that good economic policies, even in very testing times, produce good economic results, and we really need to keep the course, to change, to adapt our tools, our institutions. And on this, competition policy is essential. And I thank all the authorities. I thank the European Commission for their relentless efforts in bringing about this change with our existing resources. As always, this is the fate of public servants in these times. I think we can say to ourselves that what we're doing is useful and socially useful, and indeed it is. So really, I would like to encourage you all, wish you very productive discussions today, and then with International Competition Network. I think in this whole process of change, we need competition to continue to be a driving force in a very kind of messy environment, but competition is always there if we want, at the end of the road, to have higher employment, higher productivity, stable prices. We need to continue working, and let me just encourage you and wish you a very productive discussion today. Thank you very much.